Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to have a bit of a lore discussion. It's been a while since we've done this, but there's been a bit of news obviously for the Warriors of Chaos in Warhammer the Old World, which introduces a decent amount of lore inconsistencies actually. And we all know what it is. It's basically just Games Workshop saying, hey, we don't want you to use the units that were introduced in Warhammer Fantasy Battle that will move to Age of Sigmar and are staying at Age of Sigmar. It's a little bit disappointing because it's all following the aspect of monogods, as the focus is going to be on Chaos Undivided. Now, there's a few things that we need to talk about, so let's just jump right in. So we'll start off with an article from the 27th of August, Chaos in the Old World. There's a small section here which goes as follows. Chaos in the Old World is not like it is in the mortal realms of the 41st millennium. We're focusing on Chaos Undivided rather than on the followers of specific gods, which actually kinda gets disproved a little bit later down in this article. The four powers you see in Age of Sigmar are indicative of Chaos Victorious, whereas Undivided is in a sense more chaotic. It harks back to the proto-chaos of the old Warhammer before the individual gods started appearing. So I'm assuming that's a reference to before the coming of Chaos, where everything was literally just warfare between titanic monsters and so on. Let's just continue. The voices of the individual gods are less clear during this time. Yes, this makes sense. There's no Everchosen up and running at the moment, so the gods aren't really pushing too much. But then there's the next thing. They don't have their own devoted followers. That's a blatant lie, though, considering that you mentioned in the article later down the line, Valnia the Reaper, Arbal the Undefeated. Those are devoted followers of specific Chaos gods. And their demons aren't abroad. Yes, demons are still active, just very, very little. Demons don't just disappear from the world, it's just the fact that right now chaotic power isn't that strong. Obviously, this could just be some sort of retcon, or it could just be forgetting fundamental parts of the lore here, but it's something that's really important to talk about, because, yeah, devoted followers still exist. They're mentioned in this article, and there's still loads of devoted followers. Demons themselves aren't really a deal breaker, but we do know of them during the Siege of Prague, returning and actually being more active, because the Everchosen is launching a massive invasion into Kislev, and yeah, chaotic power swells. The power of chaos ebbs and flows. I do believe that's mentioned in this article, and it's still active, right? It's just at a weaker point. You're not going to see legions, but you might see a demon every now and then pop up, especially when the Chaos Moon is in its strongest point, and that can allow for little pockets of demons to appear in certain locations. That second small paragraph, they're likening Warhammer the Old World to that of Horus Heresy, which is what has happened in the past when they first announced the game. Which, yeah, fair enough, at the end of the day. The parallels are there, though it's saying that what Horus and Erebus really achieved was to reintroduce chaos into the galaxy after the Emperor had all but wiped it out. And then you see here the same thing hasn't quite happened in the Old World, but the 11th Everchosen didn't get to ascend because of Be'lakor, because Be'lakor is Be'lakor. However, that parallel doesn't really make sense considering that Chaos was already there. It's every 200 years an Everchosen had risen, very similar to that of Abaddon's own Black Crusades, rather than, bringing chaos into existence. There's chaos warriors, there's demons. Historically, we've known about this, and we know that there have been a number of other Everchosens who have tried to just win the game. They did change the Everchosen stuff, which we will talk about a little bit later, but chaos has always existed. It's just always been stronger at certain points, but mostly weaker because they get defeated over and over again. Tale as old as time, essentially until the end times came in, but we don't like to talk about fanfiction over here. What's really interesting is they talk about a focus on Chaos Undivided, yet in the new Arcane Journal, there is an army of infamy known as Heralds of Darkness. You can see the rules on screen right now. These are the special rules for said faction, and the Shadow Grows is focused on essentially allowing you to make a monogod cavalry focused army, which isn't the most exciting thing as most people like taking a lot of infantry, but yeah, for each character your army includes that has a mark of chaos other than the mark of Chaos Undivided, it also must include a non-character unit with the same mark and vice versa. For example, if your army includes 2 characters with the mark of Khorne, it must also include 2 non-character units with the mark of Khorne. Whilst obviously this means that you're going to be quite character heavy, when it comes to cavalry lists, they're a lot more expensive than infantry units, so you won't be bringing that many units as it stands anyway. But yeah, you can go full Khorne, full Sinesh, full Tzeentch, or full Nurgle. Effectively, yes, a monogod army. So you're not really going as Chaos Undivided over there. You can, it's just a bit more awkward because marks do favor if you work with other units with the same mark, essentially. Going back to the article on the 27th, we do get mention of named characters. Arbal the Undefeated, who is known as the Destroyer of Khorne, and then we do have Valnir the Reaper, which is also known as the Scion of Nurgle. Now, these guys aren't available in the current Arcane Journal, but it's very likely that they name drop them to go, hey, you know, we might see them in the future. In fact, the article does actually say, this doesn't mean we're going to focus on any one of these characters, of course, but they're there in the world, and we have the option to bring them into our narrative. This does mean that Games Workshop are flirting with the idea of introducing extra characters, and yes, the moment they do, say for example, a updated model for Arbal, I will buy that. I don't really like Khorne that much, I'm more of a Slaanesh follower, but the old model didn't really age too well, and I'd love to see some mono-god style characters. Not only that, but the Arcane Journal kind of went against the idea of no Undivided from the very beginning, considering that one of the two named characters for the journal itself is Galrock the Great Drake, a Tzeentchian dragon. It's a soul of a Lord of Change who is possessing a rather powerful dragon that used to be in the arsenal of the High Elves, so clearly, yeah, that's kind of already gone out the window. The big thing is, I'm not sure if Games Workshop think that we want what Age of Sigmar has in terms of, you know, the Grand Alliance, the Hedonites of Slaanesh, the Blades of Khorne and stuff like that, with loads of unique units only available to them, like Blood Warriors and whatever have you, the Marauders, I can't remember what their name was. Now, I'm not speaking for the greater community, I'm speaking on my own behalf. That's not really what I want. While it would be interesting, monogod books, when I've talked about them, would just be, this is how you do Chaos Armies of Khorne, where you'd have the normal style of units that you already have access to, and one or two new units here and there. Pretty much what's happening in the Arcane Journal so far, which is a very good system, incentivizing you to have Chaos Warriors marked with Khorne marks, Marauders marked with Khorne marks, and all the other different type of stuff, just so you can have a themed army. I mean, let's just use Khorne for example. You'd still have the normal type of core restrictions and everything else. The only difference is Skull Crushers would be there for Khorne, and maybe the Slaughter Brutes, which seems to be wildly ignored in Age of Sigmar also, so I'm not sure if they're going to get rid of that at that point. Then for Slaanesh, Hellstriders, right? Something there which is a unique unit. It doesn't have to be like everything, and then introduce the, you know, the famed Boob Snake of Slaanesh for character mounts, right? It's a demonic mount, but have it have like a special rule. This allows you to have a lot more freedom, and not only that, it would incentivize players to play more and buy more, because now you can devote yourself to a god with just a little bit here and there. Pair that with upgrade kits, so a stylized shield for the generic Chaos Warriors that we have access to right now, maybe some stylized helmets, and then, you know, a weapon or two, which would still be in the generic usage that you already have. It's just Slaaneshified or Chaosified, Khornified, whatever, and there you go. I mean, upgrade kits are something that is actually used in Horus Heresy, which is something that is the parallel. We have upgrade kits anyway with the Great Weapons and the Halberds for the Chaos Warriors, so why not just a full one to go full monogod, right? Again, not saying, you know, play as a Chaos Warrior of Slaanesh army and have loads of Demonettes and you know, Keeper Secret Lords and stuff like that. It would be cool to have some demons as mercenaries, but not as part of your main faction. I mean, if they want to put it in the core restrictions, there you go, but still, you know? And the thing is that these have existed in the lore of Warhammer Fantasy. It's just being rewritten because, I don't know, they're trying to make it different from Age of Sigmar. And to that, I would say it's already vastly different. It's two completely different styles of play. It's not like Horus Heresy and 40k, which the same basis is there. Age of Sigmar is squad-based combat, very skirmishy, which is it's fun in its own right. And then, obviously, Warhammer Fantasy or Warhammer the Old World is army-based combat. So, you know, you're fighting in regiments and stuff. That same article on the 27th goes into reasoning that, you know, there's not monogod stuff because the gods are lesser known at this point. They've been kind of forgotten about it, so they've brought back references like the Great Eagle, the Carrion Crow, the Hound and stuff. The thing is, those were always names of the Chaos Gods, right? If you go into, like, say, for example, the Warhammer Wiki, which is a good repository for most of the names, you know, Khorne is known as the Blood God, he's known as Akkar, he's known as the Hound, he's known as the Brass Lord, He's known as a lot of different things. It's just different tribes from different cultures would name the gods differently. Khorne is the true name, but it's like demons that have many other names too. The Hound is fairly well known as Khorne in Norska, but he would have a different name in the Kurgan territories, right? It's not that the true name has been forgotten, but rather, you know, that's just what they call him. And even then, we have a Norscan, Arbal the Undefeated, which, you know, is a champion of Khorne, and he's a Norscan. As the tribes and the different cultures do vary in terms of like culture, aesthetic, and just even practices on worship, yes, they're going to have different representations, but it's still going to be the same god. It's just always been that case. I'm not sure why that's being rewritten for the sake of being rewritten. It doesn't even change anything for Age of Sigmar, to be honest. Now, I'm not too well versed about all these new Marauder tribes appearing for Age of Sigmar, because there's been a lot of representation for that in Warcry, which is a very fun tabletop game, by the way. I do quite like it. It's not exactly Mordheim, but it scratches that itch for the time being. I'm assuming with all those cultures being different, they're going to see the Chaos Gods in different aspects too, right? It's just how it's always been, and that's not the case just for Age of Sigmar. It's the case for, you know, 40k, I'm assuming, and well, possibly not 30k, but 30k has been a weird one. And there's another thing to kind of talk about here. They changed pretty important lore with the Everchosens. So now all the other Everchosens before Archeon were just setting the stage for Archeon, which is really bizarre, because what we've known is that they've all been standing up to try and destroy the world. It was never a center stage, and this is why there are other people who are trying to become the Everchosen at the same time as whatever Everchosen became the one, right? When you look towards, say, for our Archeon, there were others like Crom the Conqueror who ended up saying, no, I am the Everchosen. They'd get beaten down and then they'd be absorbed into Archeon's forces, but yeah, you know, it wasn't like a center stage. Other claimants were rising, and I'm assuming the same thing will happen with Asavar Kul too. So it just feels really weird. This is the same article on the 27th, by the way. There's a lot of nitpicking that I can do here, where it's like, then everything that Asavar Kul had done, or better yet said, is going to do during the whole setting of Warhammer the Old World, as a lot of stuff is going to get rewritten, I'm imagining, is just for Archeon's sake, not for the sake of, hey, you know, let's destroy this. They were all basically going for the same end goal. Now, they've probably written that with the idea of shooting down any ideas that people had of a alternate reality, blah, 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 blah. Which, again, makes sense, but, I mean, that didn't need to be rewritten. Just say, yeah, you know, the timeline is true and this is what's always going to happen. Rather than, yeah, he's going to die because Archeon needs him to die. I would say that he's going to die because it's part of Warhammer fantasy history. It makes a lot more sense. That's what happens. We know what the end goal is. Same thing with Horus Heresy. There's never going to be a divergence, but I'd say that's not needed because people are more than happy to live throughout this timeline and go and fight the Great War against Chaos. You know, it's a really important part of the lore. I don't know. I've just read through the article constantly and it just threw me off because we're not really asking for like the Age of Sigmar system or even the 40k system. We're asking just for a little bit of flavor with Arcane Journals, right? At least I am. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Start a bit of discussion. I know it's a bit weird, but I really wanted to talk about the lore here because a lot of stuff just seemed really inconsistent for the sake of justifying something else. It's super odd. It doesn't really fit with what we've known of Warhammer Fantasy for the past 40 years. So the changes coming into effect now just feel bleh, right? I don't know. Hopefully this is just like them saying, yeah, you know, down the line there'll be monogod Arcane Journals. It's just very far in the future or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't have to be radical changes. That literally none of the Arcane Journals have been radical changes, barring the Bretonnian one that you can use cannons and stuff. But let's have a little bit of a discussion in the comments below, and I'll see you all again very, very soon, guys. Have a good day.